Whenever I hear the term homemade butter, my mind whisks me back to my childhood when my mother read Little House books. I remember seeing a picture of Laura's big sister helping their mom churn the butter. Today I'm going to show you how to make butter in your KitchenAid. First, pour in about 2 cups of heavy whipping cream into your KitchenAid mixer. This can be store-bought cream like I am using today, or it can be the cream you scrape off the top of your fresh raw milk. Now I'm going to put the whisk attachment on and start the mixer at about number 4 on my mixer. It's about medium to medium high. Here you can see it's starting to get frothy. Keep mixing. The frothy is getting a little thicker now. It won't be too much longer and we will have a whipped cream. Now we've got some whipped cream, and if we had added sugar in the beginning, this would be the perfect topping for your pumpkin pie. Now while we wait for this to whisk for a while, let's go listen to some of the history of butter. Here are a few highlights of the history of butter. For more in-depth history of butter, check out the links below in the description. So what is the origin of butter? We don't really know, but there's a story floating around that it was a nomad who was taking his milk around his journey. The story goes that a nomad had some milk in his sheepskin, and as he traveled around, it got jostled quite a bit and eventually turned into butter. You can imagine his surprise when he went to go get some milk out of his sheepskin and didn't find milk. But what did he find? We call it butter. They didn't really have a name for it yet. Now, once your whipped cream has gotten thicker and getting harder to mix with the whisk, this is when I go ahead and switch to my paddle attachment. While this continues to mix, let's hear some more about the history of butter. We find the mention of butter in the King James Version in the book of Genesis, chapter 18, verse 8. And he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. So this is what Abraham served those 3 angels that came to speak to him and Sarah. In ancient civilizations, they seem to use butter more in ceremonial uses. Butter has also been used medicinally in ancient times. Butter would be swallowed for a cough to help reduce the cough. It would also be slathered on topically if you had joint pain. In more recent history of butter, it has gone through a couple of ups and downs of popularity. Up through the 19th century, butter was very popular. It became scarce in the Great Depression, and then in the 80s, it became very unpopular. Our culture, especially in America, had made it to where that was the big evil, and we needed to go with an alternative butter solution to reduce fat consumption. Now it is found that those alternatives to butter were doing much more damage to us than real butter does. I grabbed most of this history off of 2 separate websites. I will put links to those down in the description below. You can read the full articles of both of them. Now, checking back in with our butter, it looks like it's getting a little bit more yellow and it's starting to clump together. What's happening here is those fat molecules are smashing against each other with the help of the paddle and separating out the buttermilk. Here you can start seeing the buttermilk sloshing around. I slowed it down a little for you. Now it's time to grab a pint jar for your buttermilk. Here I'm just trying to push all of the butter together into one clump. You can let the mixer do this for you. Look at that buttermilk. Now I'm going to strain the buttermilk out. There's still a lot of little tiny pieces of butter in there, and this strainer will catch those. And then I'll add that back to my clump of butter. Don't want to waste any of that wonderful buttermilk. Now we're going to transfer our butter into another bowl, preferably a wooden bowl, but anything that has good sides for pressing out the extra buttermilk. I got about 1.5 cups or so of buttermilk that I will use later in my buttermilk biscuits. Now it is time to wash the butter. Using cold water, we will knead the butter to remove all the buttermilk from the butter. Once your liquid is running clear, then it's time to start folding in our salt. I'm using Redmond's real salt today, but any unrefined, high quality salt will do. While folding in the salt, keep in mind to keep your hands cold. I keep some cold water on hand so that I don't get the butter too warm and it changes its consistency. The colder it stays, the better. Once you're done folding in all your salt, it's time to put it in some sort of a container. I have these cute little silicone containers that have these ridges on them that show the division of tablespoons. So it ends up working out to be 1 stick of these is the same as 1 stick of store-bought butter, 1/2 cup. This fancy container is not necessary. When I first started making butter, I just used saran wrap. But having those handy little notches in there for measuring does make this a lot easier. I'll put a link to these in the description below where you can order them on Amazon. So as you can see, I got about a little over 1.5 cups of butter out of those eyeballed 2 cups of cream. That with the 1.5 cups or so of buttermilk, I think I probably had more than 2 cups of cream go into the mixer initially. Now your butter is ready to either go into the fridge or get spread out on a hot piece of English muffin. I hope you enjoyed this video and will consider subscribing. I upload weekly videos of homemaking and gardening as I enjoy this journey of motherhood. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.